Robert Lawson had learned never to depend on anyone until the earthquake hit Los Angeles. The firefighter who pulled him from the rubble was Maya, the woman he had abandoned at the altar 6 years ago, saying, "I'm sorry, but I can't do this," and now his life depended on Maya's skills. Robert Lawson stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his 42nd floor office in Century City, reviewing the final details of the biggest acquisition in Lawson Capital's history. The 38-year-old millionaire investment banker had built his private equity firm into one of the most successful on the West Coast through calculated risks and emotionless decision-making. The panoramic view of Los Angeles stretched before him, from the Pacific Ocean to the San Gabriel Mountains, but Robert's attention was focused entirely on the documents that would finalize his purchase of 3 luxury resort properties in Hawaii. The deal would add another $100 million to his portfolio and establish Lawson Capital as a major player in hospitality investments. His assistant Jennifer knocked and entered with the afternoon's priority calls, but Robert waved her away with practiced efficiency. Nothing could interrupt his preparation for the 4:30 p.m. conference call with Tokyo investors who were providing the final funding for the resort acquisition. 6 years of building his reputation had led to this moment of international recognition. Robert had learned to compartmentalize his life with surgical precision, separating business objectives from personal emotions in ways that maximized professional success while minimizing distractions. This approach had served him well in negotiations, allowing him to make difficult decisions based on logic rather than sentiment. The earthquake began as a subtle vibration that Robert initially mistook for construction noise from a nearby building project. Los Angeles experienced minor tremors regularly, and residents learned to distinguish between harmless settling and genuine seismic activity. This felt different almost immediately, building in intensity rather than fading away. The documents on Robert's desk began sliding toward the edges as the building swayed with increasing violence. Robert grabbed his phone and looked toward the windows, where he could see other skyscrapers moving in the distinctive rhythm that indicated a major seismic event was occurring. The magnitude 7.2 earthquake that struck Los Angeles at 3:47 p.m. was the most powerful to hit the region in over 20 years. Robert's building, despite its modern construction and seismic engineering, began suffering structural damage as the tremor continued far longer than typical California earthquakes. Robert moved toward the doorway of his office, following the earthquake safety protocols he had learned during building orientation but had never expected to use. The violent shaking made walking difficult, and he could hear glass breaking throughout the building as windows failed under the stress of the swaying structure. The lights went out as power systems failed, and Robert found himself in near darkness as emergency lighting systems struggled to activate. The building's sway was becoming more pronounced, suggesting that structural damage was accumulating faster than the engineering had anticipated. Robert tried to reach the stairwell but discovered that the door frame had warped enough to jam the exit closed. He was trapped in his office suite as the building continued to shake with terrifying intensity. Through his windows, he could see other buildings suffering similar damage, with debris falling onto the streets below. The final structural failure came without warning. Robert felt the floor give way beneath him as 42 floors of steel and concrete began collapsing in a cascade of destruction that would reshape the Century City skyline. His last conscious thought was about the Tokyo conference call he would miss. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by crushing pain throughout Robert's body. He was pinned beneath what felt like a massive concrete beam, unable to move his legs or determine the extent of his injuries. Complete darkness surrounded him, broken only by occasional shafts of dusty sunlight filtering through gaps in the debris above. Robert tried to call for help, but his voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. The air was thick with concrete dust and the metallic smell of twisted steel. He could hear distant sounds of rescue operations, voices calling and machinery operating, but couldn't determine how far away the activity was. Hours passed before Robert heard voices close enough to offer hope of rescue. The sounds were directly above him, rescue workers apparently trying to access the spaces where survivors might be trapped. Robert used all his remaining strength to call out, hoping his voice would carry through the debris. "Hello down there. Can you hear me?" The voice belonged to a woman, calm and professional, despite the chaos of the rescue operation. "My name is Maya. I'm with the Los Angeles Fire Department. We're going to get you out of there." Robert felt a surge of hope at the contact with rescuers, though something about the woman's voice triggered memories he couldn't quite identify through his pain and disorientation. The accent was familiar, the cadence of speech reminding him of someone from his past that he couldn't place in his current condition. "Can you tell me your name and whether you're injured?" Maya's voice came through clearly now, suggesting she was working directly above his position. Robert could hear equipment being moved and what sounded like cutting tools being prepared for a complex extraction operation. "Robert Lawson," he managed to say, his voice stronger now that help was within reach. "I think my leg is broken. Maybe both legs. I can't move much down here." The admission of helplessness was foreign to Robert, who had built his entire adult identity around self-reliance and control. "Okay, Robert, we're going to carefully remove the debris above you, but this is going to take some time. The structure is unstable, so we have to work slowly to avoid causing more collapse. Just stay calm and keep talking to me." As the rescue operation proceeded above him, Robert found himself listening carefully to Maya's voice as she coordinated with other team members. Her competence was evident in how she managed the technical aspects of the extraction, while maintaining communication with him and other trapped survivors. Something about her voice continued to nag at Robert's memory, a familiarity that seemed important but remained just beyond his ability to identify. The pain medication that paramedics had somehow administered through gaps in the debris was making his thinking fuzzy, but the recognition felt significant. "Maya," Robert called out during a quiet moment in the rescue operation. "Your voice sounds familiar. Have we met before?" The question felt important, though he couldn't explain why, especially when his entire focus should have been on surviving the extraction process. There was a pause before Maya responded, longer than necessary for someone simply trying to remember a casual encounter. "I don't think so, Robert. Los Angeles is a big city. Just concentrate on staying calm while we work." But Robert's memory was beginning to clear as the initial shock of the earthquake wore off. Maya Santos. That was the name triggering his recognition. The woman who had stood at the altar of St. Monica's Catholic Church 6 years ago wearing the dress they had chosen together, waiting for him to join her in marriage. The memory came flooding back with devastating clarity. Their wedding day, which should have been the happiest day of both their lives, had instead become the moment when Robert's fear of commitment overwhelmed his love for Maya. He had stood in the groom's preparation room, looking at himself in the mirror and realized he couldn't go through with the ceremony. Maya had been 26 then, a probationary firefighter with the LAFD who balanced her demanding training schedule with planning their future together. She had challenged Robert in ways that both thrilled and terrified him, pushing him to consider priorities beyond financial accumulation and professional advancement. Their relationship had been passionate but complicated, a collision between Robert's drive for wealth and independence and Maya's desire for partnership and family. For 3 years, they had navigated the challenges of demanding careers while building toward marriage and the life they planned to create together. The wedding preparations had intensified Robert's anxiety about losing his freedom and focus. Maya wanted children within a few years, a house in the suburbs and the kind of stable family life that seemed incompatible with the 70-hour work weeks required to build Lawson Capital into a major firm. On their wedding morning, Robert had convinced himself that marriage would compromise his ability to compete in the ruthless world of investment banking. Maya deserved someone who could put family first, and he had realized that person wasn't him, at least not at that stage of his career building. The decision to leave Maya at the altar had been the most difficult of Robert's life, but he had convinced himself it was also the most honest. Better to disappoint her before the ceremony than to fail her as a husband by prioritizing business over their relationship. Now, 6 years later, Robert found himself entirely dependent on Maya's professional skills and dedication to save his life. The irony was overwhelming that the woman whose heart he had broken by choosing career over commitment was now risking her own safety to rescue him from the collapsed building that represented his business success. The rescue operation continued with methodical precision as Maya's team carefully removed debris while monitoring for signs of additional structural instability. Robert could hear her calm voice, coordinating the technical aspects while ensuring his safety throughout the dangerous extraction process. Through radio communications that Robert could partially hear, he learned that Maya had become a company captain with LAFD, specializing in urban search and rescue operations. Her expertise was evident in how other firefighters deferred to her judgment and followed her strategic direction for complex rescues. "Robert, we're almost through to you," Maya's voice came through clearly now. "I can see you through a gap in the debris. You're going to be okay, but we need to be very careful about how we move you in case you have spinal injuries." Robert could now see Maya's face through the opening she had mentioned, her features partially obscured by rescue helmet and protective gear, but unmistakably the woman he had once loved and abandoned. Her eyes showed no sign of personal recognition, her focus entirely professional, despite whatever emotions their reunion might have triggered. The extraction took another hour as Maya's team carefully stabilized Robert's potential spinal injuries while creating safe passage through the unstable debris field. Her competence was evident in every aspect of the operation, from medical assessment to structural engineering considerations. When Robert was finally lifted from the collapse zone, Maya supervised his transfer to the medical team while maintaining the professional distance appropriate for a rescue operation. She showed no interest in personal conversation, treating him like any other earthquake victim requiring emergency services. Robert was transported to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center with multiple fractures, internal injuries, and the severe dehydration that resulted from spending 8 hours trapped in the debris. His business empire continued to function during his hospitalization, managed by competent associates who proved his company could operate without his constant oversight. During his recovery, Robert learned through news coverage that Maya had been recognized for her leadership during the earthquake response, coordinating multiple rescue operations that saved dozens of lives throughout the disaster zone. She had clearly found the meaningful career she had dreamed of pursuing during their time together. The earthquake had killed over 300 people and caused billions in damage throughout Los Angeles, but it had also revealed the dedication and skill of first responders like Maya, who risked their lives to save others. Robert's rescue had been just one of many successful operations she had coordinated during the disaster. Robert's physical recovery took months, during which he had extensive time to reconsider his life priorities and the choices that had led to his success, but also his isolation. The earthquake had reminded him of his own mortality while showing him examples of people whose work served others rather than just accumulating personal wealth. Lawson Capital had survived the earthquake and continued to generate profits, but Robert found himself questioning whether financial success alone provided sufficient meaning or satisfaction. Maya's dedication to saving lives seemed more significant than his ability to generate returns for wealthy investors. 6 months after the earthquake, Robert established a foundation focused on supporting first responder training and equipment, including programs that would help firefighters like Maya perform their life-saving work. The foundation was administered anonymously, providing assistance without creating personal complications or obligations. Robert never attempted to contact Maya directly or to acknowledge their personal history beyond the professional interaction during his rescue. He understood that she had moved beyond their past relationship to build something important and meaningful, and he had no right to intrude on the life she had created. But the memory of Maya's competence and dedication during the earthquake served as a constant reminder of the kind of person he had lost through his own fear and limitations. She had become exactly what she had dreamed of becoming during their time together, while he had achieved financial success at the cost of personal relationships and meaningful contribution to others' welfare. The firefighter who had saved Robert's life from the earthquake debris had also saved him from a life measured only by profit margins, showing him through her example of dedicated service that success could be defined by lives saved rather than wealth accumulated, and that the most important achievements were those that served others rather than just advancing personal interests. Robert would always be grateful to Maya Santos for more than just the technical expertise that had rescued him from the collapsed building. She had inadvertently shown him possibilities for meaning and purpose that his wealth alone could never provide, and had inspired him to use his resources in ways that honored the values she had tried to teach him 6 years too late.